In the past, I would say, especially 2 years, there's been a lot of talk in Europe about what will Putin do next, regardless of how Ukraine, what the situation there will end up like. There's a lot of concern about whether Russia might attack the Baltics and what its ambitions are beyond Ukraine, and how will that impact European security. What's your view on that debate?
I mean, my view is that a lot depends on what happens in Ukraine. Um, you know, Putin himself said pretty recently. He said he made this joke about everywhere where there's ever been a Russian soldier could be Russia again. I mean, well, that includes not just the Baltic states and not just Poland, and not just the Czech Republic, but that includes Berlin. So and of course he personally remembers when East Berlin was part of the Soviet Empire. He was a kind of imperial functionary in East Germany, and so it's part of his life memory that he remembers that. Um, and so, yes, of course, he retains those ambitions, and he has said so, and people around him have said so, and Russian propagandists have said so, and I don't see why we shouldn't take them seriously. The question, of course, is whether they can do it. Do they have the military ability? Are they willing to take the risk? And I think had they achieved victory in Ukraine the way they thought they would, in other words, they would have taken Kiev in 3 days and the rest of the country in 6 weeks, then we would be looking at a very dangerous, Russian army on the borders of Europe looking for new conquests. And should there be some kind of collapse in Ukraine, which actually I don't predict right now, then we could see it again. I mean, I think it remain. The way you have to understand the Russians is that they will take what they can get. They are looking for continuous expansion and continuous spread of influence, and they will continue to move forward until they're stopped. And right now they're stopped in Ukraine, and hopefully we can stop them there permanently.
Hmm. So you think that Putin or the Kremlin doesn't actually have some kind of a long-term vision or a grand strategy for the coming years?
Oh, they do. Of course they do. I mean, the question is whether, they have a grand strategy that they have made very clear. Their strategy is to take back as much of former Soviet territory as they can. Their strategy is to break up the European Union, which is a problem for them because it can negotiate with them from a position of strength. It can enforce laws against Russian corruption, and so on. And of course, they want to break up NATO, and they want to get American troops out of Europe because that would also weaken Europe and make it easier for them to dominate economically or politically their neighbors. So that's their grand strategy, and that's not been very secret. That's been their grand strategy for a long time. I mean, the question is whether they can do it. Do they have the ability to do it? Yeah. Do they have the military ability? Do they have the political capability? And what I'm saying is that I think we can stop them. But do they plan to do it? Of course they do.
If you care about geopolitics, and I assume you do since you're listening to this, you might want to consider signing up to get my newsletter, Station Zero. Once every week or two, you'll get a free geopolitical analysis, a story, trend, or pattern of something that's really important but that most people tend to miss. Like the one where I talk about why there seems to be more and more war and conflict all around the globe. Why it's not just a feeling, but actually a verifiable fact. And why the increase in war can be explained with a niche mathematical theory and the plot of Jurassic Park, and what it means for the future of geopolitics. If you want to sign up, just click the link in the description.